Welcome to Chris Sowa, the Global VP of Schneider Electric, for this presentation that's going to last from 2:15 to 2:45. Please feel free to ask any question, and then we'll have one more session and we'll go into networking for those who will be there with us, and we can exchange on the day and how it went. We're very happy to have you today to share with us what you have envisioning for the future of cities. And we have about 200 registered participants, about 50 participating right now. People will be rewatching the presentation, and we look forward to learning how we can help, what type of technology, entrepreneurs, what can we do as investors, as cities, to help you achieve sooner this vision that is very important for all of us in humanity. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing from more of the participants and the other speakers. Just get myself powered up here. So very excited to be a part of the Eco-City revolution here today because Schneider Electric, we're really all about powering and digitizing the economy. And we think that that's really key to making the next generation of buildings and sustainability possible. So a lot of people, misunderstand what Schneider Electric is. They think that we are a company that's focused on providing electricity, which ironically, even though that's in our name, that's not what we do. We provide the solutions that make, electric and digital possible. And I'll describe a little bit more about what that means, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Schneider Electric energy management software and how we think that that can be a key part of the eco-city revolution and the digitization of buildings in particular. So just a little bit about Schneider Electric, based in Paris, a truly global company with about 110 countries that we do business in. We do about a third of our business in North America and very large in China, almost equal in terms of the size of the geography. Western Europe, 26%, and the rest of the world, 16%. So 135,000 employees strong, providing core electrical products and solutions, solutions that help make sure that the digitized solutions that we have today stay on. So we're very focused on resilience, and then also the next generation of digital solutions to enable efficiency. So, a lot of companies today, will talk about, their goals related to carbon footprint reductions and improving efficiency. At Schneider, it's really core to our DNA. We have a very high sense of urgency on this issue, and our management is very focused on being part of the community and the global solution on addressing climate change. To the point where I like to say, we put our money where our mouth is. Myself and all the executives at Schneider Electric have our carbon reduction goals built directly into our compensation. So it's a very substantial portion of our compensation is helping us reduce our own carbon footprint. We're looking to go carbon zero by 2030, and also helping our customers increase radical improvements in energy efficiency to offset the trends and the concerns that we really face as a planet in terms of energy use. You can see that if things continue in the as is, there's a potential for a 40x increase in the amount of electricity consumed as we continue to digitize across the world, and places like India continue to their rapid development success. So if we continue doing it the same way that we have with a fossil fuel based economy, it creates this massive inefficiency. That from an energy perspective, we believe that electric energy is a highly efficient form of electricity, and even better, we're supporting the transition to renewable energy as a key focus of the future. So we want to have enabling electrical infrastructures that power solar, wind, and also take a look at how we can leverage these solutions more efficiently with new storage solutions, but also help design the next generation of buildings and help those buildings be constructed in a more efficient manner and operated once they're built in a much more efficient manner. So the key disruptions really, that we see as actually opportunities are this energy transition that we're seeing. I like to talk about the state of Texas for as an example. People think a lot of times Texas oil, but it's interesting to note that Texas, if it were a country, would be the 6th largest producer of wind power in the world. So we're really seeing this massive shift of potential for energy transition, even in places where people don't realize it's happening. And then certainly, digital, being a key part of managing these new grid environments with artificial intelligence and softwares, as well as, starting to digitize what we say is one of the last great undigitized industries, which is construction industry. Beyond kind of the CAD and design solutions, a lot of what takes place from a planning process and actually on site within a construction site are still very much manual processes, and we're a part of helping to digitize that world with our ecosystem. So some of the potential savings and things that we see that are possible are radical improvements in electrification, decarbonization, and generating high performance for our customers and productivity really across the board at a global level. So when we say eco city revolution, really one city at a time, but really making efficiencies in buildings from between 30 and 50% possible. Increasing electrification of things like heating, to make, because it is much more efficient, up to twice as efficient as other sources, and really driving that renewable renewable world that I mentioned before, helping to decarbonize anywhere from 6 to 40% by leveraging wind and solar by 2040. So those are some of the focus areas we have. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail is where my focus is at Schneider Electric, which is within the energy management software domain. And this quote here is, I think hopefully excites a bit of the imagination. What else could I do? This is the foundation really for anybody that's thinking about construction. How can we change the world, change our cities and buildings in completely new ways? As we think about this kind of a process, that means, really thinking about the full BIM 6D process. We started out the BIM and digital efficiency in construction, thinking about two-dimensional designs of buildings, the architect's building, typically in softwares like a Autodesk or a Nemetschek software, but driving a lot of that initial design in those solutions, then moving to three-dimensional views and renderings. And then ultimately, it's starting to include in the build process, marrying those digital representations to the costs and also the time and technical specification for each and everything that goes into a building, every material, every piece of equipment, actually starting to digitize and manage that process completely. And then adding time as an element of that process as well. So managing the schedule, when the goods and services arrive. And then once a building is actually operational, taking that digital twin or digital copy at this point, because it's not actually running, of all of the as-built things that are in a building, and then transitioning them to the owner operators. And as a part of the operations, not only optimizing that process for things like heating and cooling on an ongoing basis, but then learning about that process and feeding that learning back into design. So if you could imagine, a new way of designing and building, which is very different from today, in the very beginning of the process, rather than kind of relying on rules of thumb on how much a building might cost, like a hospital in Atlanta, what might that hospital cost be based on the specific functions, the types of equipment that are going to be in that hospital, the specific uses of that hospital. but also thinking about, how can I leverage all of the other types of hospitals that have been recently built in Atlanta and around the world that had similar types of objectives, and then also adjust those objectives further by fine tuning it for carbon reduction and energy efficiency objectives, and then using artificial intelligence, generative design solutions to very early in the process up front, rapidly generate architectures, and in our case, electrical architectures, automatically, and giving a full bill of material to somebody who's doing that design process that is very close and accurate to what will be the as-built later in the process. And then, as we step out into the construction domain, rather than having, pieces of equipment arrive at all different times and be scattered around the building site, actually plan and use digital solutions so that the things that are needed, like the electrical solutions, arrive exactly when they're needed in the project plan. We make sure that there's no overlap in the service personnel that are coming on board. So if somebody's installing electrical wiring, they're not doing it at the same time that somebody is supposed to be doing plumbing or something else on site. And they're literally taking the equipment off of the truck that's been pre-tested and pre-configured, matching it to the design, and making any adjustments for what they see actually on site, taking it off the truck and plugging it right into the building process. So eliminating a lot of the inefficiency in terms of storing equipment on site, potential quality issues because the equipment and materials of a building are not matching what's actually happening within the site. And then transitioning further from a digital perspective, once a set of equipment is installed, rapidly electrically commissioning that equipment, sending all the information about that equipment up to the cloud, and providing electrical and automated permitting processes, and sending information to the different government bodies that requiring it throughout the world. And then on an ongoing basis, we want all this information to flow into operations, as I mentioned before. So we'll want to make sure that information is obtained by the building owners, all the detailed costs, detailed technical specifications, where it's easily found within the building in the operate domain. So a real opportunity to radically reinvent this whole process. And it really is a circular process from our perspective, enabling things like collaboration as a part of this process. Also focusing on, resilience and security. So cybersecurity has been a very big topic during the elections, but it's also a big topic within critical infrastructure. And as more companies start to add things like solar and wind and microgrids to their infrastructure, they're taking on more of the responsibility that our grid operators have traditionally to make sure that the electricity is always available and that it's totally secure, both physically secure as well as cyber secure. So that's also a part of the important journey that we're on as we think about how do we digitize this building life cycle process, and think about the potential for leveraging previous projects, the detailed technical specifications and architectures, and having the ability to use AI to more rapidly adapt those architectures so that you can use it on a new project and get a much better sense much earlier for some of the cost trade-offs that we should be thinking about on all projects between cost and energy efficiency and carbon reduction. And then as we move into operate, actually building that true building operation system across a building's environment, where we're gathering IoT data from our HVAC and our security systems, our air circulation systems, all of the key sensors that are located throughout the building, and bringing that together for intelligent maintenance, but also compliance and better control and efficiency for those buildings. And for companies that sign up for things like carbon zero, make sure that we're able to track how are we doing in our buildings and facilities toward our goals for carbon reduction. And where we're off track, rapidly be in a position where we can take action and make recommendations on how to take action on toward our journey of reducing carbon and driving efficiency within our facilities. So just to kind of recap, what we see within Schneider Electric, and we want to work closely within our ecosystem partners are really around those three key domains, especially within software. One is radically reinventing this efficient design process, and we've already made some acquisitions in this area in the electrical domain, and we're going to be continuing to partner with companies that help to optimize this next generation of energy landscapes, solar, wind, and storage. But actually thinking about how we can do this, leveraging artificial intelligence and really optimizing it for carbon footprint at scale. As I mentioned, everything Schneider Electric does is at scale. Bring all of this information together so that people can, and not just experts, can start to get a sense of what's possible in the design process, optimizing that building process, helping people collaborate, across all those 5 dimensions, the CAD dimensions, the cost, the project management time dimensions, the technical specifications, and allowing all the collaboration of the key stakeholders throughout the whole project plan of that construction process. And then once we move into operations, as I mentioned before, it's really about leveraging the data to make sure that the building is being optimized, not only from a cost perspective, but from an energy efficiency perspective as well, and a carbon reduction perspective. And that's a really fast overview of how we're thinking about digitizing buildings. I wanted to open up the floor to some discussion and questions at this point. Are there any questions?
Yes. Hi, Chris. So thank you very much for this presentation. So basically, any question for Chris from the audience? Any questions in the chat? So I have a couple of questions, Chris. I just want to make sure, people don't have any questions. So basically, can you depict us maybe a little bit, you showed us, many slides, in your head, what's your vision of, for example, Boston? In 5 years, what is it going to be looking like, right? And us, having our houses, how is the house going to look? How is the energy going to flow?
So there's a couple, as we think tactically, the next couple of years, toward this goal that we have to reducing carbon footprint, let's say by 40% by 2040. There's a couple things that I'm thinking about as we coming out of COVID. One is really repurposing existing buildings. Now, what the buildings are going to look like, is still becoming clear. So there is a lot of malls and retail space that are closing down and might never open up the same way. At the same time, we have major needs for housing in a lot of our big cities like Boston, San Francisco, and other places. Where do we get that affordable housing? So how can we take this excess of space, whether it's office space, because now companies are moving to hybrid offices potentially, whereas they spend some time in the office and some time in the home, and then retail spaces them in some cases going away or taking on new forms. So repurposing these buildings, both existing office buildings, making them more collaborative environments, as well as finding ways to, from an energy efficiency perspective as well, reuse what's there, so that we can build that next generation of affordable housing. So I look at existing infrastructure revitalization as being a really exciting opportunity that we see coming out of COVID and helping us solve some key problems. And number two, as we start to build that next generation of energy efficient buildings with solar and wind in places like Boston, there's some beautiful buildings that have been going up, not far from Copley Place that are LEEDs compliant buildings, but we not only want to design buildings that are to make them compliant, we want to monitor them. How are we doing in that building design for the comfort of the people in those buildings, as well as how we can learn to make them even more energy efficient going forward. And then the last part of that equation is the increase in electrification and use of renewable power. So we think about EVs, micro charging stations, being placed throughout the city, potentially maybe 10 years out down. I don't know, I'm not going to be the one that's going to guess the timeline, but we can imagine fleets of more automated cars coming through that are electric powered vehicles that need to be recharged at various points in time, as well as robots. So, there's this opportunity to create new networks and logistics that are, going to come into being around these three areas. So again, big opportunity in existing buildings to improve them, and then we have the opportunities for greenfield buildings to learn, what we've done already operation wise, and then create that next generation of microgrids and efficient energy infrastructures to power all this cool digital stuff that we've taken for granted now for some time.
Excellent, excellent. So what are the hurdles to get to the end states? Because maybe I'm going to add another question in that, how important is it also to go to that end state in your eye?
Well, I had that one, the one slide on there, an increase of 3.5 degrees in climate change is, what we're projecting with our Schneider Electric scientists and teams, if we stay on the as is. And so, global warming and climate change, we don't see as a debate. It's happening, right? We literally have the state of California on fire. So people attention, the attention is here. People that are paying attention. And if you're close to these areas, you pay attention. So I think that's the urgency level for us to change. I don't think we have a choice. And I do expect that, even in places, like I said, where, people don't think about Texas as a leader in, carbon reduction, right? Because it's Texas oil. People think about New York, New England, and California because of the regulations that we put in place to help drive toward that. But because of the lowering of costs in this new energy transition, we now see that wind is actually becoming cheaper than coal in many instances from a 30-year kind of timeline perspective. And the tax credits and other things have made Texas the biggest wind power in the United States by far. It dwarfs any other state. So I think that this is, the potential is for, whether you are a red or blue minded person, there's an opportunity here for you. So if you're in a traditionally red state, like a Texas or a blue state, we should be coming together on carbon reduction solutions. It makes economic sense, and we need to do it from a climate change perspective. And the sooner that we start acting, the better. And like I said earlier, my compensation, I would say about a third of my compensation is linked to bonuses. And if we don't make our carbon reduction targets within Schneider Electric, I lose some of that bonus. So we take it very seriously internally, and we want to be a part of helping to digitize areas like buildings. That's my focus. We can't do things the same way. People are, as always, we're the opportunity and the obstacle. So I think that people need to change the way they do things. This building process that I outlined before is still a vision. This is, I guess I should have said that, it's not reality yet. We're enabling one piece of it at a time, not only by ourselves, but with key partners. And people are going to need to be, starting to use digital design solutions much more than we do today. And I don't mean PDF files, right? We want to move past PDF. We want to start sharing digital information, learning from projects that have taken place, and doing so at a much more rapid pace. So the good news is that the tech is here, right? From a tech perspective, I come from technology for over 20 years, Accenture at IBM before Schneider. I was an artificial intelligence leader at Accenture prior to joining Schneider. So I know that the artificial intelligence capabilities for things like generative design, to rapidly bring together sensor data to operate buildings, this is there. What we need to do is to get people to think differently and to collaborate and share information. And we need government policies where possible to help get that ball rolling in some cases, right? Whether it's, happens to be tax credit favorable, for larger renewable energy, opening up the grid, in some places where it's more constrained, so that we can have the ability to more easily sell back renewable energy that we put on our roofs. So I think that there's a number of things that need to happen. I think the first thing that we need to do is realize it's possible, and really all of us start to evangelize, the need to leverage digitization as a key part of this, and the new transition to renewable energy as a key part of it as well. So I would like to see, similar to Europe, that we start to look at the carbon footprint of every single building and manage it on an ongoing basis. I know New York has some targets around this already, but beyond just the ongoing electrical usage or energy usage within a building, but actually understanding what is the carbon footprint of all the materials going into that building when you're building it, and then tracking it on an ongoing basis. I speak with partners I have in the UK, and they joke a little bit in jest, but they're quite concerned because people design buildings in one way, and they get it approved from a government compliance perspective under one set of guidelines. And then when it's built, it's actually used for something very different, right? Which makes it much less energy efficient. And so I think that, that's what I meant when I see this cycle. And we need to move beyond just designing for efficiency, which I think is extremely important. We need to actually watch the function and monitor it on an ongoing basis. So, using these energy indexes that are available, actually monitoring in buildings with sensors as to how they're operating, and holding people, at the end of the day, is people and companies accountable for how they are being good corporate citizens as it relates to energy efficiency and carbon reductions, which, again, to go back to that climate slide, it's an imperative, right? So I think that the time to debate and talk about it is over. We really need to act and to be bold. And I think that, we need to force in our process people to think about, not only the cost of buildings and efficiency of buildings, but how can we better utilize our spaces that are already built, because a building that's already built is going to be less carbon intensive to build because it's already built. And how do we revamp that building to make it more energy efficient?
Excellent.
The way that it is. So does that help?
Excellent. Yeah, very much, Chris. So we have two more questions here from Aliza. Thanks for asking this question. So the USA is ranked number 2 in carbon emission, as we all know. Do you think this new administration will still pursue exiting the Paris Agreement?
No, I mean, they've come on record. I mean, I think that the words that they used was on day one, they're going to re-enter the Paris Accords, right? So I think that we can expect a more engaged process at a federal level, and continued hyper engagement at a state level, which we're already seeing in California, for example.
Excellent. So then another question from Aliza again. So Singapore has been the eco architecture for a while now, and they are thriving. Do you think the West should learn from them? And maybe I'll piggyback on that question because it's the topic we talked on earlier. And Boston being connected to so many cities internationally, does it make it also the hub where maybe we can have that sort of dialogue, exchange? And what's your thoughts on this with Boston specifically, and then Singapore, and how can we learn from each other and to accelerate? If it's so radical and it's so important, I feel we need to make drastic measures to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Singapore is doing a lot of fantastic things and use cases, and we have operations there, so we're actively involved in some of those next generation buildings and also improving the efficiency of existing buildings. So, beyond what I call beyond leads buildings. So yes, I mean, we should certainly learn from Singapore. I think that Boston, because of its, I like to call it an idea capital, right? There's a lot of people who are within the universities who can help try out new things. And I think that, we need to move beyond those ideas into an action capital. And if we do that, I think that, we can not only learn from others, but we can become one of those leaders ourselves, right? So a lot of potential with the assets we have in Boston.
Excellent. And so with the perspective you have, what cities would you say, your top 5 cities that are really role models that are inspiring you and thinking it's going really well in the right direction?
I think that Singapore is an easy one, but I'm not sure that I'm wholly satisfied with the way any of them are actually running. So I think that we need to do a lot more in terms of measuring and managing the existing building stock within developed countries. So I think like 80% of our stock is going to be here. It's not going to be going away. Whereas in places like India and China, there's a whole new building stock that's being developed. So I would look at it, through the lens of what they're doing with buildings. So in the United States, we really need to be in places like Boston thinking about how we can make our existing building stock more efficient. And I don't think that people have really opened up this idea of how do I need to change regulations and my permitting processes and things to enable that reinvention of buildings. So that's really important for it to happen. And I think that people don't think about the importance of innovation and regulation, right? But this is a fantastic opportunity. It kind of goes back, in Calgary, they saw this opportunity with excess office space when the oil bust happened to potentially move to housing. And the ideas were there, but the regulatory environment didn't make it easy, right? So the ideas are there. That's where we have to be more bold and creative in the developed, stock of buildings. When we're building the next generation of buildings in Asia, and particularly in China, there's a lot of really good things that China is doing at a massive scale, right? They're trying out all kinds of new electrical architectures and energy efficient architectures at scale. So I'm optimistic that we're going to learn a lot from some of the cities in China. Singapore is a very unique case in some ways. Maybe Asia is a little bit different because of the ability to capture and manage data. We saw in Toronto, not all cities are as excited to have that kind of digital, some of the privacy issues that come up with that also need to be considered. So I think that there'll be a cultural bias and things that we may need to make some decisions on as society. But I unfortunately don't see anybody as a shining model who's doing everything right just yet. I think that even in Singapore, we can do a lot more to help them toward their vision and goals to operate their buildings more efficiently, and yeah.
Excellent. So maybe last question. We have investors on the call today, including, Nick Anderson from Keiretsu Forum. What would you say to investors? Is that a good time to invest in entrepreneurs in the green tech space, smart city, resilient cities, and so on? Is this the golden age of green?
Well, first I'll say, Schneider Electric, we are an investor too. So our Innovation at the Edge team, we have a 500 million euro fund, and we're actively investing. We haven't stopped during the COVID period. So the short answer is not only do I think that, we're doing that, right? So this is a great time to be investing in things like innovative storage solutions, for example, for renewable energy. We're actively looking to, if there are any startups on the phone, to partner with startups and with VCs. If you have companies in your portfolios that are in this area, I'm actively focused on partnering with those companies because we want to scale this. So I think that it's going to be in some cases a startup kind of corporate strategic partner to help us scale some of these technologies more rapidly. And I think that's a great potential. So yeah, let's invest together and let's partner to scale it as fast as possible.
Excellent. I think that's a perfect way to end this discussion, and a perfect message. Capital is here. If you have a great idea, submit it to Chris Sowa or to us, and we can help you achieve these objectives. Thank you so much, Chris, for this great talk, and we look forward to more interaction. We are planning also a speaker meet and match after the event, and if you willing also to stay up to the end of the event, we'll open the floor also for some networking.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Pleasure being here today.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.